Hello, welcome to the queue. The postman came again this week. Got another box in the mail. I'll open that later on in the video, but it's probably pretty obvious what it's going to be in the box. Event cards is what I'm going to talk about here on this video. And if you're not familiar with event cards, it's a random event that, you know, whether you're drawing it from a deck or you're rolling a dice and doing whatever it says on the card. And they can be anything from, you know, infantry has a +1 defense, you know, just simple things that don't really change the game a ton. And you can go all the way up to where you're adding a minor country. You know, if you drew this card, you know, say Spain joins the Axis or they join the Allies, one of the two, you know, if you want to go that route. AxisandAllies.org has a section in, you know, the house rules, and there's where I printed these event cards, I guess you'd say. You could print them on a heavy cardstock and just use them as is and cut them out. And probably, you know, I don't know, there's probably 200 in this one. But there's a lot of good ideas there. You can use them as is, or you can create your own. Let's look at some of the event cards that we've used here. Alright, so this first deck is a deck that I created years ago from some ideas that we had here, some ideas from AxisandAllies.org. I hadn't played with event cards with anybody else yet, so those are really only two sources of information to create these. But we did ours on a dice roll, which, you know, we would roll 2 dice, I would say 2 6-sided dice, you know, between 2 and 12, and you would, whatever it is you got, you know, some of these cards are good, some are not. This one here, if you get this one, dice roll of 3 for Germany, Finland declares complete neutrality and quits the war. Which actually did happen, but it wasn't until the end of the war when Germany was losing. But that can actually happen here, so you'd have to get out of Finland and all the German troops, and then it's strict neutral, so it's off limits. So there's different things, you know, and it's kind of fun to roll the dice, and you know, you pretty much know because you've got 12 options. So you roll the dice, you get what you get. The other thing we did, we had a tech and espionage in addition to the national events. So it was a way to get technology or steal technology, or, you know, take away technology from a country, depending on the dice roll. And we've got these set up for, you know, all the nations. So they all have some opportunity to have some event cards, some technology, some espionage. It's kind of fun. The second deck that I created here was a template that was on AxisandAllies.org, and you know, this was blank and the middle was blank and it was blank, so you got to fill in, you know, whether or not you were going to do a picture, you know, what's going on here, you know, like this card, German 88's ambush armor. So in a combat, the first 2 casualties must be armor. So that's kind of interesting. This deck SS had created using some of the rules that he plays with, or I should say not rules but event cards, and he used the same template and just added his stuff, but he took it to a printer. So I printed these on the trying to think, 65 weight cardstock. So they're sturdy enough, and you can see where the ink is starting to wear off from the use, especially this one. What's that one? That one's African Corps Supplies. Yeah, that'd be a good one to have. He printed his off at a printer, so they're a little more sturdy, a little more, you know, that ink isn't going to wear off. We kind of mix these 2 decks together when we play with them. He had his printer, I don't know if the printer goofed up and printed an extra deck, but he was kind enough to mail me these, and I've played with some event cards at his place, several different ones, and he's got some more that he's created since then. that are pretty cool. And I'll bring these over here. And that is, like I said, that's the ones that I printed off of Axis and Allies just straight up. So, you know, you could easily cut that out, choose, you know, which ones you want out of here. You can see I got some marked up that I liked, and I used some ideas. But there's a ton, you know, of different ideas, different generals, different events, all sorts of different things that you could easily add to your game to spice it up. And the reason for the video is this box. I'm going to have to back that camera up, so let me pause that and widen it. Okay, I want to take a step back before we open that box and see what's in there, and kind of go over a little more in depth the method that I prefer for event cards. Like I said before, that first deck we started off with, you rolled a dice, you know, two dice I should say, and between 2 and 12, you know, whatever the number came up on the dice, that's the card you took, and you know, whether it was good or bad, you had to play it. I've played at other people's house, and we've played here too, where you just draw one card off of a deck. If it's good or bad, you have to play it. But it's kind of restrictive, you know. I guess if you don't want to get more involved with the card deck, an event card system, that's probably the easy way to do it. We like to, my preferred method, and probably, you know, my son's as well, and anyone that's played here, we'll deal out hands. I think the first couple times we dealt out a hand to each player, and you wound up with a lot of cards because some of them, you know, are nation specific. So you wind up with some cards you can't use because you're not that nation. So where we've landed is we'll deal out a large hand to the Axis powers, and then a large hand to the Allied powers, and then each, you know, country that comes up to play, the major countries, we're not going to do the minor. Well, I take that back. We actually do have some China cards in there that can be played. So yeah, the Allies do have a slight advantage then on the card draw. But say, you know, Britain comes up, they choose from the Allied stack a card to play, and then, you know, whoever's next, you know, they just follow suit. So you get to look at all the cards that you have in your hand and decide which one's best for which country. So that kind of really, you know, and sometimes, you know, the players kind of argue a little bit. Hey, I need that one. No, I need it. You know where you're going with that one. But it's kind of cool to do it that way. These cards, like I said, we've got two different sections. These basically any nation can use, and then we have, you know, a bunch of cards that are just nation specific. But like I said, an event card, you know, a dug-in defense, 2 infantry gain +1 to defense for better defendable positions. You know, stuff like that. The dive bomber, you know, you play that card, you get 1 free tactical bomber in the mobilized new units phase at any factory. And we'll remove the Stuka card and place the Dauntless in there in honor of the Midway movie that we watched the other day. Diving on that Japanese carrier, and it is probably sunk. But anyway, you know, here's a espionage. You can look into the other team's hand of cards and discard one of them. That's always fun. So these are just generic ones that anyone can play. Let me slide in here some of the nation-specific cards and just kind of line them up there, give you an idea. So within your hand, you may have, you know, the Rommel card. If a German tank scores a hit, add 1 or 2 more hits. You know, you can roll dice. And there's a little caveat there. If the battle's in Africa, then you just add 2 hits. Rat Patrol raid, 1 plane. The Rat Patrol destroys 1 plane in any North African territory. Opponent's choice. My favorite one is in German is this winter preparation. So the Russians have a card where, you know, severe winter comes and they're limited on what they can do. Well, this one balances that one out. Another, you know, interesting one that's kind of based off of a real event is Paratroopers Assault Sumatra, which is, you know, and yet we have a card in there for Crete as well, for the Germans. I don't know if that's the only major paratrooper assault for the Japanese, but they did do that. And, you know, we throw it in the game as a card. And the other thing too is when you're playing a deck and you're the allies and you draw this one, you think, oh gosh, you're hosed, you can't use it. Well, at the end of the round you get to discard a card and you get to draw an extra one. So say the hand for the allies is 7, so they get 7 cards. Well, if they play 3 and they have one that's an axis, you know, then they get to fill that hand back up at the beginning of the next turn, and the joy continues on. So that's kind of where we've landed on our card deck play. And let's get to the unboxing. Alright, as you can see, this box is from makingplayingcards.com. So this is an event card deck that Leatherneck had created, and he had posted it with the help of Matt Todd, and you can find it there with the same section as Sireblood's Cache, and there's some card decks from Grasshopper, and you could get this as well, and it is 204, so that is significantly taller than that stack that I've got. But I don't know what's in here really, because you couldn't tell. So, but me playing with event cards, you know, occasionally, not all the time, but this was very intriguing to me. It says rules, so we got a whole stack of rules here on the top. You know, who wants rules really? Let's divide that out here, and then we will take a look at, oh, there's some different cards there. Okay, so these rules, let's look at the rules first. Know the rules. And these are basically amphibious assaults, air bases, naval bases, blockers, airborne, kamikaze strikes. So these are kind of the rules in his game. Most of them are pretty similar, although supply rules. I've not played with supplies before, so that'll be interesting to see how that works. Submarines, surfaced, damaged capital ships, order of play, combat air patrols. That's interesting too. Convoy rating. So a lot of these rules look like they're pretty straight up, but there is some unique rules in here. He's got an order of play that looks pretty similar, but it's got some different roundels there. So I'll have to look at that. Rail movement, that's interesting. Alright, so that's a dark rule set. Here is, I'm going to guess, no, these are not. I thought maybe one would be allies and one would be axis. But of course, now that I look at that, let's turn that back over. No, nothing here that signifies these are allies. But these, on the first beginning, looks to be like all axis rules. Well, these are victories. So these must be the victory rules for his game. I'll have to go through there. Hold Tokyo, that's pretty important. Alright, so boy, there is a lot going on here. Island resources. China. Boy, yeah, those would be interesting to see those rules. So here's a Portugal. I guess this is an alignment card. You can align Portugal, and this must be the card that tells you about alignment rules according to the game he plays. So yeah, we could add that, you know, or you could pick and choose, I imagine. Here's some specific cards. These must be alignment cards, you know, to align certain nations. And let's turn that over. Yeah. National advantage. Okay, so maybe Turkey is a playable nation. Well, no, it says neutral. Huh. Now, this is my first looking at the deck. So far, it looks pretty cool. I mean, the quality here is really good. Here's some Vichy France cards. I don't know if you've ever played with that rule, where when Paris falls, you know, you got to roll off for the French territories and ships to see if they're going free French or well, they're not going Dutch. And you get those out of there. You know, free France or Vichy France. So we use that a lot. That's kind of fun. The Deluxe 40 game has that as well. Put those there, and then I think these look like specific nation cards. We'll skip France because France usually isn't in the game very long. Alright, so national objectives. So there's a whole lot more for Anzac there, and then national advantage. So I'm not sure what a national advantage card is, but I'll be digging into that to find out. That looks interesting. So you've got all these different countries. Well, the UK has got a ton of cards. Well, look, I really like the pictures on there. So these are pretty cool. All right, so let's see if that's what the rest of these are. So we got Canada, China, United States. Oh, United States has got quite a few cards. Japan. Japan has a ton of cards. And there's Russia. So that's the remainder of the deck is the different countries. And you've got national objectives, like I said before, and national advantages. I'll have to look and see where do we get to those. So those national advantages. So those are more like when I'm looking at these just off the top of my head. Those are more like a type of an event card, so to speak, because it changes things just a little bit for each country. So that looks pretty cool. So I have got that to look forward to, digging in and deciphering what is what. And at some point we'll have that in our game. Thanks for watching, and keep rolling dice. Out. I printed these off a while in hard. There's where I printed these, but there's